Hello friends, I am Dr. Amarjit Kaur. I am Professor of Accounting and Business Communication at Faculty of Commerce and Management. I am working as Dean as well at Gurugram University. I am author of 8 books and 55 research papers. It's my privilege to be present here to talk on approaches to overcome barriers in communication, part 2. So, we have already discussed in the first part 2 approaches, sender based approach and receiver based approach, and now we will take up another 2 approaches. One would be message based and the next one, the fourth and the last one would be rule based, which is actually the 7 C's of communication. So, rule based approach. So, in this session we are discussing message based as well as rule based approach to overcome business communication barriers. Well, so as I said, barriers are basically all those reasons which doesn't allow the message to be comprehended or understood well by the receiver. Anybody could be at the fault. A sender could be at fault, receiver could be at fault, the message in itself could be at fault, it was not well drafted, the channel could be wrong, the environment could be problematic, or we absolutely ignored the rules of communication, those 7 C's of the communication, right? So, let's take up the third approach, message based approach. So, it is important to ensure that proper message based approach is adopted for any message whenever we are communicating. So, there is a compatibility between the nature of the message and the channel of the communication, right? So, you may like to use any channel, but what kind of message is it? The nature. Is this an oral message? Is this a written message? Is this a visual message? We do not have even a single word, only a picture, right? So, that is a visual message. The nature is visual. So, nature could be oral, nature could be written. So, in those cases and then there is a compatibility with the nature of the message with that of the channel of communication we decide. Okay. So, in the message based approach, let's say if we are communicating orally, right? So, we should be speaking to communicate. We should just not be speaking for the sake of speaking, right? So, we call it as oral communication and we ensure to speak to communicate. So, receiver is not, possibly interested in your message because he doesn't want receiving a written message, because he is not an educated person. He doesn't know a particular language. He or she may be educated, but he has taken his formal education in a particular language. He just knows one language or 2 languages, and the language you can write, he or she doesn't know that, right? So, in that case, we should be using oral communication, we should be speaking, because the written communication is not possible here because of either you cannot write the language the receiver knows, or the receiver doesn't know the language you can write. In that case, make sure you just do not write because you just have to write because you do not want to speak. In that case, written communication will not work. Okay. Then, whenever it is not, it is important to get the feedback immediately for a sender. In that case, do not try to send through a written communication or do not try to communicate through writing, because you need immediate feedback. So, in that case, it's better to speak or to use visual because you are really keen for getting the feedback. So, the most important would, medium here would be through spoken language, through spoken communication. Okay, because you need feedback immediately. You do not have time, or you cannot wait in between. So, in that case, you will have, or the sender will have to choose the spoken communication option. Then whenever the sender and the receiver, or either of the two or both of two, have high emotion, a person is very emotional. In that case, it's not a good idea to communicate in writing. If the sender has a choice or the receiver has a choice, right? If this choice is available, one should try to communicate through spoken language, then through a written one, because emotions are involved. So person would be able to respond on the spot itself, and the communication will be more effective, because the argument, counter argument, would take place. Because otherwise the emotions of the person will not allow the receiver or to receive the message if he is reading the message, because he is too emotional, he thinks in a particular way, or he has a particular kind of feeling for someone, right? The message is in writing, so he may start thinking in a particular direction and may not be able to think other way what sender was keen to communicate. But had it been an oral communication, sender will be able to intervene looking at the facial expression of the receiver. Sender would be able to intervene or correct or add or modify the message looking at the receiver's response, because the receiver is emotional. If the sender is emotional, even then the spoken communication is more effective if the option is there, the choice should be there, right? If someone has the choice, then somebody should be choosing the spoken communication in such situation. And if the receiver is too busy or occupied to read, I can't read, let's say I'm driving, I'm a receiver, I'm supposed to be receive some message from somebody, from my family member, from my friend, from anybody, okay? And as a receiver, I'm driving, and but I need to get some information. Let's say I'm driving to a new place and I have no idea about the place. My Google map is not working, unfortunately. That is a new city to me. I do not have internet connection. I do not have the phone number of the person I'm trying to reach. And what you're supposed to get the address from your friend, from your husband, from your wife, somebody, from home. So in that case, while driving, receiving, talking on phone is not possible, but maybe somebody announces, sender tells you through some announcement on the road. There's announcement, saying go left, go right. If you were driving to reach to some public gathering, and there are announcements on the road, people going for this rally, turn left, take right, take second right, left, whatever. So in that, the receiver was too occupied, in driving, or busy in driving, or concentrating on driving. He cannot read the message. In that case, it would be effective to communicate through spoken language. There could be many more such situations. Somebody is so too busy and cannot read, then certainly as a sender, it's my responsibility to assess, shall I communicate through talking, through spoken language, or through written language. Oral communication, as I said, one should speak to communicate. The next point here is, sender wants to persuade or convince, especially in a business situation when there is a salesperson presenting to a prospective client, customer, a project manager presenting to his boss about the development, about the failure, about any problem with the project. So I want to convince my boss to change the process of production, to change the process of installation of plant, machinery, right? So it would be more effective if I am present in person, or even I am speaking on phone, but I am communicating orally than written communication, because I would be able to persuade better, to the receiver. So if sender has to pursue and convince the receiver, in that case it's important that sender speaks, talks, so uses the oral communication. And then if there is a need for discussion, even in that case, the oral communication would be more effective. There is a security issue, and we need to take a call immediately. There's some emergency in the plant. I need to take a call immediately. I cannot wait for writing and and then decide. I need discussion. I need to have argument. Listen. I need to have the possibility of making a counter argument, and then finally take a call. So whenever discussion is needed, and in all the situations I mentioned, it's important that we use oral communication. So this is how we can overcome the barrier. Otherwise, there was a need for discussion, there was need to persuade the the receiver, and we failed because we chose written communication, right? So this is a way to overcome the barrier of communication. Whenever the budget of the communication is very tight or low, even in that condition, one may prefer or should prefer oral communication. Okay, when criticism of the receiver is involved, we know the receiver is going to criticize the idea, and in that case, I need to be communicating orally so that I could respond. I could try to make the receiver understand about the idea I am communicating. So because criticism is involved, so you should be as a sender, of course, be positive to receive the criticism effectively, only the productive one, only the rational one, but not all. But even then, if you are expecting the receiver may criticize the idea, you have some idea about that situation, so better you talk instead of writing if you have the choice. And there's a possibility that receiver always prefers one-on-one contact, always prefer oral communication. If you know that choice of the receiver, then certainly you should not choose to write or to send visual communication. So that's what the sender's responsibility is. So this is absolutely on the message. We are not talking about the receiver or the sender, we are talking about the message. So we know this particular message receiver would like to hear. For example, if a boyfriend has to propose to a girlfriend, have to say that I love you, then he should know my receiver, here the girlfriend would like to hear this from my mouth instead of sending it in writing, because here the body language would be rather more important to communicate such a message than only just saying just writing. Okay, so these are the points which I am making about the message, that we should be communicating message through oral communication. Then what are the situations where we must use or we send the message through written communication? So what all situations are those? When the sender need to maintain the record for future use, right? As a sender, I know there's a need to maintain this message in record. Records are required for any law purpose, for any process purpose, for any RTI purpose. To meet up any future challenge, I need record. So in that case, my message should be written. My message should not be oral one. The next point is the receiver would like to refer to the letter. Sender may like to need it in future reference, but there is a possibility receiver needs this for future reference, for his official reference. Even in that case, message should be written one if it is required for future reference of either the sender or the receiver. Okay. The next situation when the message should be written one, here the message in itself is complex. It's required very patient study by the receiver, in that case also it should be a written communication. Okay, so we should be writing to communicate because message is very complex. So this is the barrier which is regarding to the message, the content of the message. Content of the message needed to be recorded for safe or needed to be kept as a record. Content of the message is to be such that which may be required for future use in court, in any law, or can be demanded by anyone at a workplace even. It may be used, for example, the budget of the previous year may be used by the next subsequent manager who is supposed to be overtaking the existing manager as a new manager in future months. He or she may like to refer to the previous year's budget. So it needed to be available in writing, right? Then the next point is when message is such where step-by-step procedure is required. Now, for example, all the manuals of the appliances, electrical appliances we get, they are always in writing. They are not communicated orally to you. Okay, so because there are so many steps involved, so message is crucial. Use the written communication. Message is such that the user, the receiver may need to refer to it over and again. It should be written communication, right? So because it has step-by-step procedure, I need to read the first step, I need to try it on the appliance I am using, and then move to the second step. Okay, so written communication here is required because of the nature of the message, because it is about the procedure of the manual of the appliance. And there are possibilities or likelihood when the oral communication is not possible because people are distantly located or there's a problem, physical problem, somebody is impaired, can't listen actually. So then you have to write in that situation, or simply there's no possibility of phone, you are in another room, phone call is not allowed, even the phone is not allowed. In that case, written communication would be used. And then there's another possibility, the oral communication is not possible in real time because the people who are communicating, the sender and the receiver, they are situated in different time zones. So the real communication may not happen. Though nowadays we see, there are people who work in the night shift in one country and other country had daytime, and they are able to communicate, but that may not be true for all the employees. Okay, so the real time communication, oral communication is not possible. So in that case also we should be choosing the written communication. Now the third part of this message approach is, or the message approach to overcome the barrier is visual communication, because the message is such that oral and written, neither of the two may be very effective. So in that case we would need to use visual communication. What are those situations? What are those instances? For example, highly difficult technical topic is presented. Then in that case, if we use the graphs, if we use diagrams, if we use pictures, if we use models, frameworks, in that all these are going to give more weightage to the message you are trying to communicate. The message communication would be more effective, and this is it means we are overcoming the barrier of the message by this approach. Of course, if the message is very complex, it needed to be supported by clear visual aids. Then certainly we should be communicating visually as well. It's not necessary that only visual communication should be done. We need to see You may use the visual communication along with the oral one, you may use the visual communication along with the written one, or you may use all the three together. Depending upon the needs, senders, receivers, requirement, all the situation, we have to take a call on this. And when message comprises both word and numerical data, even in that case, because people may not be able to remember numbers. Let's say I am presenting very big numbers, these many crores, lakhs, thousand, hundreds and tens of rupees. So it's a huge amount I'm talking, and they are not the absolute values. Denominations are not, divided by any 10 or 100 or whatever. So in that case, it would be good that message is actually communicated using some visual effect. I am showing the rise in sales. My dollar price, my dollar sale is up, but I am showing it with the help of graph. It will be more effective. Person would actually have the great impact on the memory and the mind if a visual graph is showing that the sale has grown up, instead of just a trend line is there. For example, a trend graph is used to show the decline or the increase in the sale, decline or increase in the operating expenses in a meeting. So it's only word may not be very effective, only numbers may not be very effective. I am using visuals to exhibit what I am trying to say or to prove what I am trying to say. The message will be more effective here. So this is how we can overcome the barrier of this situation of dealing with the numbers or difficult situation. And those situations when the receivers are from different cultural, economic, geographical, language background, even in that case, visual play a very important role, right? So I am talking to somebody who doesn't know English, and but I need to communicate. He just knows Japanese, for example. So if I put up some visuals, even a graph, a model, a picture, anything, it would be effective. Person would be able to understand. Okay. And when there's not much time to explain, you cannot use oral communication. Better you just use visuals, because of the shortage of time. Sometimes it's just the picture will express a lot. Nowadays those emojis we use in our WhatsApp messages, what are they? They're visuals only. I don't have time to write, let's say, good job, I applaud your work. I will simply send that emoji which is clapping. I don't have time, I'm driving, or I don't have time to write yes or complete message. We just simply show thumbs up, we simply make a smiley. So those are actually visuals only. Signs, though they are sign language, they are signs, but actually that's a visual communication, right? So this was the third thing. Now coming to the last approach, which is actually rule based approach, where we use 7 C's, adherence to 7 C's. So we call it as rule based approach. Rule based means there are rules, which are, we said, as rules of communication or guidelines for communication. So this is a guideline based or rule based approach to overcome the barriers in communication. What is that? We need to follow all that 7 C's which we talk all the time. To unless we follow those 7 C's, there is a likelihood to have distortion in the message, either on the receiver or on the sender's end. Okay, so it's important that the 7 C's, one by one I will talk about them for a few seconds each, that they are followed. So this is, if we follow a rule based approach or this guideline based approach, which is adherence to 7 C's, my message will get through, or the receiver will receive the message effectively. So first of all, that ensure the message is clear. Clear means we use the right word for the message I want to communicate. If I say, you are punished, then we cannot say that you may be punished. if somebody is punished, means somebody is given somebody has been given some penalty. So make sure you use the clear word. Make sure you do not use unclear language in the message. Then make sure your message is complete. Everything, number, appendices, attachments, everything, whatever you wanted to share. Let's say if the communication was regarding a meeting, the time of the meeting, the venue of the meeting, agenda of the meeting, everything should be there in the message, right? We cannot send an incomplete notice or information regarding a meeting. So unless this message is complete in all the aspects I am mentioning, then of course if it is incomplete, it is actually a barrier to the communication. Concise, we should not be using lengthy sentence, we should not be using heavy sentence, long sentences, heavy words and unnecessary words. Try to be as concise, as short as possible. So short and crisp rule applies everywhere, in communication as well. Concrete, right? Be conclusive. Do not give confusing statement, contradictory statement. So a message will be concrete only if it is, making impact about the agenda of the message, objective of communication. Every minute, whenever we communicate, we have different objective. So we need to ensure the message is concrete. The next point is the correctness. So this is rule based. The next rule is that we need to ensure we do not share incorrect information, right? Be it the part of report, be it the part of memo, notice, letter, email, whatever we are writing, or speaking. Make sure you share the correct information. If you are speaking and you are sharing the incorrect information, somebody who knows better than you in the audience, he will lose trust in you. He will actually question you there and then only. And if been proven in the gathering of so many people that you were sharing incorrect information, you would see whatever you have said before that may be 100% correct, but your credibilityness is challenged. Your credentials are questioned, right? So you lose the trust. So make sure it is correct in all means and ways. Coherent, as I said, I keep on saying, your body language and your words should always be in congruence with each other. They are coherent. Verbal, non-verbal, both are coherent in each other. And be courteous. Never be incourteous in your message. You may have to be, you may have to communicate a difficult thing. You may have to ask somebody to resign. You may have asked somebody that you are sacked. Even then, be courteous. You may be angry and you want somebody to send you explanation. Even then, be courteous. So, incourteous, or non-courteous behavior is very, very non-acceptable, becomes an hindrance in the communication. So, the rule says, the guideline says, 7C's guideline says, be courteous, so that the message is perceived in the same manner you were trying to communicate, right? So, this was the last thing, that fourth approach, which we call as rule-based approach to overcome barriers in communication. So friends, I hope you were able to understand that how can we overcome the barriers in communication. So thank you very much for being with me, for being a patient listener. So I appreciate your presence. Thank you very much.